This week I visited the Sea Life Aquarium in Concord, North Carolina. It's like an aquarium attached to a mall, so I thought it was kind of odd. I really didn't expect much. I didn't look up anything about this place beforehand, but I was really pleased. This place had some amazing exhibits, some really cool touch tanks. Everything was very clean, and they also take in some rescue animals like sea turtles that had been in boating accidents. So who doesn't like that? This was also the biggest pufferfish I've ever seen. He was so cute. It was also just so much bigger than I expected. This is definitely a 4-star aquarium for me, so definitely worth checking out if you're in the area. I only leave off the last star because, some of the things could be updated a little more. Some things are a little dated, but it's really overall definitely worth checking out. Very nice employees too. I actually got a behind-the-scenes tour of the filtration for this massive tank we're looking at right now, so I'll post that sometime soon. I got a behind-the-scenes tour of this 117,000-gallon tank at the Sea Life Aquarium in Concord, North Carolina. It's worth noting I didn't get special access or anything. I bought a ticket to go to this. Let's check out the filters. Here is the pump room. I believe it looks like they have 3 main pumps, and over here on the left-hand side is their sand filters, but they're actually now changing it to glass media inside their sand filters. Those little containers have 4 different sizes of glass they put in. Here is 2 large protein skimmers they got, and here's the view from above. It's pretty amazing to look at. Maybe one day I'll have a 117,000-gallon goldfish tank. I got to visit this store Aquatica in Charlotte, North Carolina this week, and I gotta say, this is a pretty nice shop. They have a large amount of saltwater stuff, but they also have a fair amount of freshwater too. These puffers are so cute. I think my wife wants us to get some soon. So thanks for that, Aquatica. They also had a few nice comet goldfish. They were nice and healthy big boys, living their best life. This is pretty cool. They have these charts on most of the tanks that show what each fish can eat. This is some of their display tanks. I like that they have freshwater and saltwater display tanks. That's pretty cool. And they just have a lot of equipment too. Lots of used items and everything you could need, really. I caught a shot of them feeding these freshwater fish. That was pretty cool. This is a 4.5-star fish store for me. The prices were pretty good. A nice selection of different types of fish and products. They could earn that last half star by maybe having some more freshwater product and more proactive employees. And I think the sections could be more clear. This place was kind of like a maze. I just kept finding new stuff. If there's a creator you like here on TikTok and you want to help them, do one thing. Subscribe to their YouTube channel. Don't get me wrong, I love TikTok, but YouTube gives creators so much more money. Money isn't everything, but money helps your favorite creators improve their content and keep new content coming. So if you want to help them, subscribe to their YouTube. My YouTube is WestCoastGoldies. Why did my goldfish die? Well, if you've had a goldfish die, it usually comes down to 2 things. Water quality and where you got the fish from. Now, water quality is pretty much as straightforward as it sounds. The more water you have for each goldfish, more healthy they will be. I've seen a lot more people with sick goldfish in tanks than ponds. That's because they get so much more water in ponds. It's much more healthy for them. So keeping up a good water change schedule can really help. The second thing, where you get your fish from, is kind of tied to disease and genetics. If you get your goldfish from a PetSmart or a Petco, sorry guys, then it's likely not bred very well, not going to have very good genetics, and it's also likely sick already when you buy it. So if you want the best possible chance of keeping a goldfish alive, buy the fish from a reputable source and keep it in as much water as you can possibly stand. Not saying that you will never have a goldfish die again, but you'll see just by doing those 2 things you'll have much better success. Will my goldfish eat other fish? Yes, definitely. And that's a big reason why it's not recommended to keep goldfish with fish that are smaller than them. Because if they fit in their mouth, they will eat it. But this isn't always a bad thing. A lot of people like putting goldfish in stock tanks or ponds outside to keep the mosquito levels down because they'll eat the larvae and any bugs that land on the water, which is good. But yeah, they'll try to eat almost anything. They eat the plants in the tank, they eat the sand. A big reason why goldfish keepers don't recommend gravel with goldfish is because they'll try to eat the gravel and it'll get stuck in their throat. So yeah, they will eat other fish. What goldfish varieties stay small? Well, 2 in particular come to mind. Bubble-eye goldfish and celestial-eye goldfish are known for staying on the smaller side, just because of their genetics. But don't get any ideas. Just because they stay smaller doesn't mean, I can keep them in a tiny bowl. The standards don't really change. If you want the goldfish to be healthy overall, you still need to keep it in a pretty big tank. Rainy season is upon us, so it's time to start thinking about this downspout and the rainwater going into my pond system. The thing is, rainwater is so much different than aquarium or pond water. The mineral content and the pH are severely different, and we need to keep things consistent in a certain way for the goldfish. So we're going to put in some argonite. It's basically a substitute for crushed coral. It has minerals in it and will balance the pH closer to what the goldfish need, just so that the water coming in from the downspout is not so different than the water already in the aquarium. Okay, I think we're ready for the rain to start now. So my wife loves pufferfish, and ever since we saw these green-spotted puffers in Aquatica last week, it's been over. We are setting up a green-spotted puffer tank. We're aiming for this to be pretty aesthetic. We got black sand, I got a hang-on-back filter, got a really cool thermometer, got to boil the driftwood so that it sinks. That was kind of fun. And of course, green-spotted puffers take brackish, so that'll be a first for us. Brackish means it's like fresh water but with salt in it. Also got to put some argonite in the filter to keep the pH mineral balance. And of course, lastly, I added some biological booster, just some beneficial bacteria to get the cycle started. So hopefully this thing cycles fast and we can get some spotted puffers soon. So this is my first time setting up a saltwater brackish tank. Pro tip, look up instructions before you use a refractometer. This raises the salinity of the water. Because I did it wrong and now I have a massive headache from trying to look through this. Follow instructions. I decided to do some more work on the green spotted puffer tank today. I want to hang a light from the ceiling, so that's what I'm going to do. You can probably also tell we did some rescaping in the tank. We want to make as many areas for the pufferfish to hide as we can. I'm also testing out which of my plants will stay alive in the brackish saltwater. I did some reading and asking around, and everybody said it's kind of hit or miss whether the freshwater plants will live. So I'm going to test the ones I have and see how they work. Hanging this light was pretty annoying. I cut out a lot of footage of me fiddling with it because it took a while. But after some more fiddling, it looks pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with it. And that is a up-close look of some of the rescaping we did. After I was done with that, I figured I'd do a little water testing and see what's going on. And it's pretty much what I expected. The far left tube is a little green. That means we got some ammonia going on. So it's not quite ready for a puffer, hopefully soon. Maybe not the carpet algae update you want, but this is the truth. It's not going great, as you can see. It's nice and thick, it's just brown, which is not bad for the goldfish or anything. It's just ugly. We want green carpet algae, not brown carpet algae. So I find myself scraping it all off once again to let it regrow and hope it does better next time. Blubbles was also very helpful cleaning up this brown algae. He really enjoyed eating up the little pieces that were floating around. We're getting closer to wintertime here in Washington, so I want to do some health and wellness checks on all the goldfish in the pond here, just because I don't get to look at them up close often because they're in a pond. And I'll look at them even less when it's cold and rainy outside. So I want to check on them now and also see how much they grow over winter. Fishy Bezos is up first. He always is healthy. Tofu has gotten quite a bit bigger. Look at that fat tummy. He does have some odd white marks on his gills, not itch, so I got to read up on that. Next up is Mr. Panda. He was fully black and white when I got him, but he's starting to get some reddish orange on his fins, and that's nothing to be worried about. Goldfish change colors all the time as they age, and black is an especially unstable color in goldfish. Cantaloupe's up next. I'm a little worried about him. He did survive in the pond last winter, but he seems to do even worse in the cold weather than the other goldfish. So I gotta keep a close eye on him. I might have to take him inside later. Up next is Bagel. He's always healthy. Just a strong fish, not really any problems. He did fine last winter in the pond. Can't say the same for his brother, Fettuccine, R.I.P. I decided not to breed this pair of Ranchu goldfish. Cantaloupe's on the left there, he's a male, and Breadstick is on the right, she's a female. And I thought about breeding this pair together because they have nice colors and good body shape and they're really cute, but they both don't have the best health, so I don't think passing on those genetics is the best idea. For one, they're both a little prone to swim bladder disorder. They get a little floaty, especially after eating or if they get too cold. And Cantaloupe has this weird thing where a few of his scales on the back side poke out a little, and that's usually a sign of dropsy and disease, but it hasn't progressed at all, and I've treated him and everything months ago, and he's still kicking, so I want to make sure any goldfish I breed are as healthy as possible, so I'm just going to go ahead and avoid passing on these unhealthy traits. I love this thick algae that grows over this waterfall spillway. Every couple of months, I get to peel it off, and it's so satisfying, especially when it comes up in big pieces. It's also time to shut off the UV filter for the winter. As the daylight hours decrease and I'm not outside looking at the pond as much, you don't need to have it on. And once it gets a little colder, I'll probably turn on my heater. You can probably guess what I'm drip acclimating here. It's pufferfish time. We decided to go with 2 green-spotted puffers. Now this does come with a catch. Green-spotted puffers are territorial and aggressive, so you need to have a lot of space and decoration so they can kind of have their own areas. And they have a lot of personality, which means they could get along just fine, or they could be really mean to each other. So we're fully prepared to take one back to the store if they're too aggressive to each other. We just gotta wait and see how it goes. Also, because these will grow, at some point in the next couple years, we'll need to upgrade to a 55-gallon, but while they're this size, it's okay. And I plan on continuing to try more freshwater plants to make sure they have plenty of places to hide from each other. You can see they each have their own little rock cave with a mangrove plant growing on top. I'll post videos soon of them getting fed because it's really funny to watch. In case you've ever wondered what it looks like when a goldfish is asleep, this is it. I decided to flip the lights on pretty late at night for something, and this is how I found them. Deep in sleep. Breadstick face first in the moss. Mrs. Tomato just kind of chilling there. They can't close their eyes to sleep, so they kind of just pick a nice spot and chill out. It's time for a pufferfish name reveal. We're keeping things simple and classy. Introducing Fat Boy Slim and Slim Boy Fat.
Just out of this right there because the appropriations. So the old man can also be said that he had a not that he close for the start to some numbers and it disappeared one of all the quantities that I live in call this for Ross and was all battle.
And I thought it's just the step called the presentations to take both Kevin. How is it all doing so great for these?
Finally, we get some rain here. I've been a little excited for my first winter with my downspout system hooked up to my pond here. The rainwater goes from the downspout to the filter to the tank and then in a little overflow when it overfills and it just goes into the lawn. So these fishies are living the good life. Constant water changes for the whole winter. And something else really cool, if I get super busy for some reason or if I go on an extended vacation, I can put all my goldfish inside out to the pond because it's getting constant water changes and they don't even need to be fed in the wintertime. So I'm pretty pleased with the setup. This is exactly what I wanted to happen. Fat Boy Slim and Slim Boy Fat each have claimed a cave, and that way they can chill away from each other in their little secluded space and get some rest, not bothering each other. That's a big concern when keeping 2 green-spotted puffers together. You want to make sure they can have their own space. They're not always looking at each other because they can get a little aggressive and territorial. So I do plan on adding more decorations still, but it is nice to see that they're getting along fine for now. First off, gross warning. There was a lot of mold building up in Sesame and Buffalo's aquarium, so it was time to vacuum it all up. I don't think this is as satisfying as scraping the algae with a razor blade, but hey, maybe someone will enjoy this. I don't know. This is the reality of keeping goldfish, so you should know what you're getting into if you ever get some. This mulm isn't as big of a deal if you have substrate and plants. It just kind of fades away and gets absorbed. Alright, so a little update on Buffalo and Sesame. That one batch of eggs that Sesame let out was the only ones she did. They haven't done any more breeding in here. And I'm not super surprised. They normally breed around springtime, so it was kind of a long shot that they would breed right now. But we have a solution for this. If I put them in my very cold pond outside for a few weeks and then bring them back in and warm them back up and feed them a bunch of food, they'll be like, oh, it's been a long winter, time to breed again. This is a nice springtime got going on here. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to acclimate them to the pond outside, and I probably plan on leaving them out there for at least 3 to 4 weeks. Then I'll bring them in, warm them up, and they'll be ready to go. My plan did up changing just a tiny bit. There were some red spots on Buffalo that I'm just a little suspicious of, so I'm putting him in with some other goldfish in a salt tank. I'll make a video about that soon. We got a lot going on today. Tofu has some waxy looking spots on his gills and head, which is usually kind of fungus. As I predicted, Cantaloupe wasn't doing well with the cold and his scales were actually just barely starting to poke out. Buffalo had some suspicious red spots, and I just don't trust Panda. So we're going to put all 4 of them in this 40-gallon tank and give them a salt treatment. For this we use aquarium salt. Depending on the disease and the strength of the fish, you can have a salinity of 0.3% all the way up to 0.9%. That's like the high end. So I think I'm going to go for 0.6% because I want to be kind of aggressive here, not really interested in losing any of these fish. And if they can't survive 0.6%, then they probably weren't that healthy anyways. So I dissolve the aquarium salt in tank water and I'll disperse it in the tank over the next 12 to 24 hours. I'll also raise the temperature of the tank to the mid-80s because that helps with certain diseases.
What do you think that everyone else is doing wrong in the hobby? A lot of people are doing this, and I just think that's not right.
One of the things that I think a lot of people do is They want to play doctor. We've talked a lot about, just put some salt in. People want to buy a whole medicine chest, treat this and treat that. You don't know they have worms. Some of that stuff you have to get a microscope to see. And I used to have a microscope, and I used to analyze fish poop and all sorts of stuff. I used to cut dead fish open and look at their gills and see what's on there. In reality, even in my fish room, die almost every day. Not all of them. A fry might die, 10 fry might die. So I think playing doctor is something that is, in my opinion, a negative experience in the hobby.
I always like a heads up before I see a sick fish because it's not my favorite thing to see, so you're about to see a sick fish. So Mr. Panda's not doing too well. After about 24 hours in the salt tank, he's pretty lethargic, breathing very quickly, not looking too good for him. I do think this is a direct cause of a parasite or infection of some type. These symptoms could line up with temperature shock or pH shock or low oxygen, but I really don't think that's it. I was very careful with my drip acclimation, and the other fish that came from the same tank as him is doing fine in here. I'm not a vet and I don't own a microscope, but if I had to guess, I'd say some type of disease or parasite destroyed his gills so he can't breathe. And after filming this, Mr. Panda actually passed on his own, so the next video will be how to properly get rid of a dead goldfish. How to dispose of a dead goldfish. Firstly, sorry for your loss. Second off, please do not flush it down the toilet. Although it's true, most water treatment plants will take care of it, you don't want your fish carcass introducing disease to native populations. And there is always a risk depending on where you live if you flush it. And if your treatment plant is really bad and your goldfish isn't really dead and your goldfish somehow survives, it's very invasive. It can destroy local ecosystems. So there are other safe ways to dispose of a goldfish, but I prefer burying it. Be careful when moving and transporting your dead goldfish because they can give some diseases to humans. And you may want to bury it deeper depending how big your goldfish is and if you have dogs or something. And don't forget to thank your goldfish for the joy it brought you. It has not been a great week here in the West Coast Goldies fish room. Everyone in my sick tank has now died. I do think they all died from the same disease, and I do think I have a guess of what it is. I can't make a specific diagnosis, of course, but I do have some action I'm going to take to make sure none of the other goldfish did the same disease. I have a plan. But now I gotta sanitize this tank that had a bunch of sick fish in it. I normally don't like using something so harsh, but we have to bleach this tank to make sure nothing survived. Gonna completely destroy the cycle on this tank. Can't risk any parasite or eggs surviving. And now my fish rack looks so bare. There's only breadstick and blubbles, and there are only 4 other goldfish in my pond outside. I have plenty of room, so I'd like to look into getting some new goldfish. And you best believe I'm gonna have a strict quarantine this time. Little carpet algae update. It's completely regrown again, and there's more green this time, so that's promising. I took your suggestions and used something that would not accidentally cut my goldfish in half. I found this old Starbucks gift card in my wallet. Why have I kept this expired Starbucks gift card in my wallet since 2012? I have no idea. But anyways, I'm basically hoping it'll grow back even greener next time. And as usual, Blubbles loved helping out and getting some tasty snacks. And I also moved Breadstick in here so Blubbles wouldn't be so lonely, so she's also chowing down. Also, now that there's a second goldfish in here, I'm gonna see how the change in nutrients affects the algae growing. It was pretty dirty by the time I was done scraping, but I went ahead and did a water change after this, and they're looking good as new. These are now my only 2 goldfish inside, so I'm hoping to get some new ones soon. I'm considering ordering online, but I also have a local hookup for goldfish from the Philippines, so I might try that. I was shocked by a WestCoastGoldies video last week that taught me that snails can transfer parasites to goldfish. I had no idea about this. I swear I remember Googling this and trying to find the answer, and I think I found stuff that said, oh, it's fine, but I guess it's not fine, so I'm gonna get rid of all my snails on my goldfish tanks. And so to do that, I got these 4 cute little loaches. Apparently, they find snails very tasty, so I plan on rotating them between the tanks that I no longer want snails in. Eat them snails, my little tweakers. This is the book I get a lot of my information from, Fancy Goldfish, A Complete Guide to Care and Collecting. I really like it because it's a collaboration of vets and experts, but sadly it's a little outdated. My copy is printed in 2001, so I always try to compare things with newer information. At some point, I'd love to buy this book, but it's kind of expensive and hard to come by. But man, is it large and full of great information. Leigh from Goldfish Corner has a great YouTube video giving a review of the book and showing you the layout, so I highly suggest checking that out. Please let me know in the comments if you have a goldfish book you like to reference for advice. I'd love to check it out. Okay, I've made a choice here. I am dying to breed some fish, even if that means I'm just making some mutts. So I'm going to try to breed my 2 healthiest fish, which is Mrs. Tomato and Fishery Bezos. They're both calico. They're not very high quality according to their breed standards, but they're very healthy. And I think if I breed them together, I will get something that looks like an eggfish goldfish. It's not a common type, but you can Google what that looks like. Because they were outside in my very cold pond, I brought them in a bucket inside and left them for a while. Then I drip acclimated them to this unheated tank. And over a few days, I'll heat up the water to the 70s. This will hopefully trick them into thinking it's springtime again. I'll also do small water changes frequently with colder water to simulate spring rain. I will say though, I'm only 90% sure Fishery Bezos is a boy, so we'll see if they breed. Yeah, I don't feed my goldfish in the wintertime. Well, a more accurate statement would be I don't feed my pond fish in the wintertime, but this goes beyond my pond. If any of my tanks drop below 55 degrees Fahrenheit, I will not feed them anything at all. This is because when it gets below that temperature, the goldfish go into a state called torpor. It's like hibernation, but they're a little more active. But their metabolism slows way down, and if you feed them when it's cold like that, they'll either not eat the food and the food will spoil the water, or they'll eat the food but they won't digest it. It'll just kind of sit in their body, which is not good for them. And I actually like to stop feeding them once it's below 60 degrees. I'll let them snack on algae and plants and bugs just to kind of make sure all the heavy protein pellets are cleared out of their system before it gets really cold. So that's why I always tell people, just a little update on Operation Snail Genocide. I'm trying to get rid of all the snails in my goldfish tanks. First off, I bought the wrong type of loaches and they are not even eating the snails. So this tank still has them. But when I put Fishery Bezos and Mrs. Tomato in this tank, they ate all the snails. So problem solved here. Mission failed successfully, and this one still has snails too. So I'm torn. I don't want to just move my goldfish around to eat all the snails, because the whole reason I'm getting rid of them is for a potential risk of parasites from the snails to the goldfish. So I'll probably still have to get a clown loach to do the job. Rating goldfish tanks from TV and movies, part something, I don't know. Tanked, season 6, episode 3. The main part of the episode, they're making an octopus tank. That's something different. But they decide to put 12 red cap Aranda goldfish in a 5-gallon. It's just a horrible idea. I have no doubt that they know better, and I have no doubt that this didn't stay like this. I'm sure they took the fish out and did something else, because that many goldfish in that small tank will die very quickly. But they're showing other people that it's okay to put this many goldfish in such a small tank, and that gets this a 0 out of 10. Sorry. Fat Boy Slim and Slim Boy Fat are dead. This is a sad day indeed. You're probably saying, wow, a lot of his fish have died lately. But honestly, this is the hobby. It's a difficult one. Anyone in this hobby will tell you there is a harsh learning curve, especially when you're trying a new type of fish. Mistakes and dead fish and correcting things are part of this hobby, so you have to keep learning and never give up. All that being said, I really don't know why the green spotted puffers died. The cycle's stable, the salinity's stable. They didn't show signs of sickness. They didn't show signs of stress. They also didn't fight with each other. They died a full 2 weeks apart from each other. The only thing I can think is that we found both of them up against this intake on this filter. So maybe it was too strong. Now, these were my wife's fish, and at the moment, she's too sad to get new ones. So it's a bit up in the air at the moment. Will we get new pufferfish? Will we dismantle this tank? Will I just use it for goldfish? I don't know yet. We'll have to see. Update on Operation Snail Genocide. I bought the wrong type of loach the first time, so this time I went back to the store and I got a yo-yo loach like people suggested. And seriously, as soon as I put it in the tank, I never saw it again. This was like 2 weeks ago, and I have no idea where this thing went. He's not in the filter, he's not on the ground around the tank, he's also not eating the snails because he's disappeared. So another unsuccessful attempt at getting rid of the snails, so I'll have to do something else. Let's take a short little trip to the aquarium store today. I'm on the hunt for a solution to my snail problem, and maybe a new goldfish. I don't know, we'll see. Let's take a look inside. They got some good selection today. A lot of verandas, they got some good plants, they got some cute chibunkins, pretty big boys actually. They have a lot of different types of goldfish, but the prices, I'm just not feeling it. They're a little pricey. I know importing them is expensive, but for these prices, I could pay just a little more online and get some really cool goldfish. So I don't think I'm going to buy any today, but I did buy a couple other things. You'll just have to wait and see what those are. So I'm buying a clown loach to take care of my snail problem, and I think I got the biggest and best one in the tank because it took the poor gentleman so long to catch him. This guy is a feisty little tweaker. He's also very hard to film because he always goes to spots where I can't see him very well. So I now know why people recommended other things besides the clown loach. First off, they like to be in big groups. They grow huge and they swim super fast, so you end up needing very large aquariums for them. So I don't plan on keeping this guy. You know how you can hire a herd of goats to clean out a bunch of bushes for you? Well, that's what I'm picturing this guy as. I'm gonna keep good care of him while he takes care of snails for me, and then when I'm snailless, I will find him a good home. I really wouldn't be opposed to keeping a school of these though in the future. They're so cool. I really love watching him swim around and hunt snails. I'll try to get a good clip of him eating a snail, but he doesn't like when I watch him, so it might be difficult. I keep goldfish, but I don't sell goldfish. But I'm now partnered with a company who does. Blubbles agrees. If you need goldfish or aquarium supplies, go to jyaquarium.com. I'm now partnered with that brand, so if you use the code WCG at checkout, that's for West Coast Goldies, you can get a 5% discount. They have an easy-to-use website and an amazing storefront in Las Vegas, so I hope to visit there soon. They sell very high-quality goldfish that they import from China and Thailand. They only do one-day shipping to ensure the fish gets to you as safe and happy as possible. They also have a lot of cool aquarium equipment and decorations. If you want your fish to push around a little soccer ball, this is the place to buy it. So in the continued effort of trying to get carpet algae in this tank, when I went to the aquarium store the other day, the shop owner gave me this type of moss, algae, hair algae stuff for free. So I put it in the tank to try to reseed in the good hair algae I want growing on the bottom. Now I will say I did introduce the hair algae I want when I first started this journey, but it wasn't much. So we're going to put in some more and see what it does. Okay, just to clear up what an egg phoenix goldfish looks like for you, there's a lot of nuance to the classification and the body shape, but if Mrs. Tomato and Fishery Bezos had babies, I would keep the babies that most resembled this body shape, kind of like a ranchu with long fins. What happens to my pond if it freezes? Pretty much nothing. It has a lot of good water movement to keep it from freezing. I also have this little inline heater just to take the edge off, and it actually works really well. Sesame usually hangs out on this side of the tank for that slightly warmer water. This is exciting! My first time ordering goldfish online. This is a big moment. There should be 3 cute little goldies in here. I'm very excited about this. First things first, make sure they're all alive, just because shipping the goldfish can be pretty rough on them. Never know how rough UPS is going to be with the box. Next, I'll float the bag in my aquarium to make sure the temperature becomes a match. And even if your fish are from a trusted source, I always recommend quarantining them. So these 3 cuties will stay in this tank for a couple weeks. Because getting shipped is so stressful, I won't have any light on this tank just to reduce the stress, and never pour in the water from the bag of a shipped fish. Companies usually add a little medication to make the goldfish more comfortable, and because there's been 3 goldfish in this little bag for 18 hours, the water's usually pretty gross. You don't want to dump all that ammonia in your aquarium, so I'll dispose of the water from the bag elsewhere. Let me know in the comments your favorite quarantine procedure for fish. Some people like to use medication right off the bat, some people just like to use a little salt, others just like to watch them for a couple weeks. This is probably the last update for the green-spotted puffers. They ended up being a pretty hard fish to keep, and because this was technically my wife's tank and her first time fish keeping, the death of the puffers kind of spoiled her experience. So she's not ready to try again with a different type of puffer for a while probably. So I'm dismantling this tank. It was fun while it lasted, for me at least. I got to learn about keeping green-spotted puffers, and I learned how to keep a brackish aquarium. But I also like the opportunity to focus more on my goldfish tanks, because that's really my bread and butter. That's what I like the most, goldfish. Gone but not forgotten. We will always remember the green-spotted puffers by way of this mangrove plant that was in their aquarium, and it's the same brackish water from their tank. I look forward to the roots filling the jar and the plant growing tall. I got free goldfish. I actually found a nice person on OfferUp who was moving and couldn't keep these cuties. 6 goldfish. She gave me this bucket and the portable sponge filter and bubbler all for free, and the goldfish, of course. So I'm going to drip acclimate them for probably 20 minutes, and once they're ready, I'm going to scoop them all up and drop them in. I was pretty skillful with my net today. I managed to get them all in one scoop. So the person said they had these fish for about a year. They're all very small though, pretty much babies still. So I look forward to seeing how they grow. They look to be 3 red caparandas, 2 fantails, and 1 single-tail fantail, according to her. I'll definitely quarantine these guys for probably a month, make sure they're not sick. I can already tell one of the fantails' health is iffy, so we'll keep an eye on it. Okay, I'll let you have a close-up look of the new fish. They're very cute. We've got 1 milk cow, 1 kind of black, and 1 mostly black with some orange spots. Now, the first day after arriving, they were definitely a little stressed. They were swimming kind of erratically. The day after they arrived, I tried to give them a treat of some bloodworms, and they would not eat them. But then when I came back in the room, 5 minutes later, they were gone. So they wouldn't eat in front of me, which is kind of funny. I went ahead and added a little salt to the tank just to help them relax a little bit. I'm going to keep testing a little bit at a time how they respond to food. And let me know your suggestions as far as names. I'm really feeling Cookie for the milk cow one, the black and white one. I believe Cookie's a male because I've seen him chasing the other 2 fish, which means the other 2 might be females. So let me know some names for the black one and the black and orange one.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Well, I was at Value Village today and I saw this 20-gallon aquarium, and immediately I noticed the Python water changer, which is usually $60 on its own. So $50 for this whole tank, I figured why not? Figured I'd go through everything, keep what I want, and sell the rest. This worked out pretty well. The Python works great. Sadly, all the API products were expired, so I went ahead and threw them away. But I ended up keeping an auto feeder and the Python and selling the rest of this setup for 40 bucks. I know I could have gotten more for it, but I enjoyed going through the stuff. And for me, it's like I got an auto feeder and a Python for $10, so I'm happy. I got a Tahiti philodendron for my aquariums from a person on OfferUp, and thankfully it was already rooted in water, so it shouldn't be a shock for it to go in my aquarium. My goal is to have this plant and other pothos grow down these 3 pillars, hopefully hide the sidelines and make it a more immersive view. Urgent deal alert at Costco for fish keepers. A lot of people ask me where I got my aquarium rack. This isn't the one I have, but this is a great deal. This thing supports 2,000 pounds per shelf. If you need an aquarium rack for your fish tanks, go check your local Costco. Hopefully they have this. What do you think?
Oh, very nice.
And it's getting quite this. It's and this is about the powers between it's a
This update has taken a long time, and you can probably guess why. Fish-Free Bezos and Mrs. Tomato have not spawned. No babies. I will say, I'm sure Mrs. Tomato is a female, and I'm still pretty convinced that Fish-Free Bezos is a male, because I believe I remember last year him doing some spawning with some other fish. I know from some comments on my last post, people are like, oh, how do you not know the gender of your own fish? It can be a little tricky with goldfish. I will make a video soon on how to tell a male from a female goldfish, but for now, I'm not quite sure why they didn't spawn. It's possible I didn't leave them in hibernation long enough for them to reset, if you will, and think it's spring and breeding time again. They could also just be not interested in each other. At the end of the day, they are animals, so they're not always going to do what I want them to do, and that's fine. So this might be the end of the road for this pair for now. We'll just have to see. So when I'm doing a water change with the siphon, I've actually had little fish get stuck up in the siphon and get injured. Now normally I just watch it to make sure no fish swim up it, but now I have a product. It's this filter bag. Now there's lots of different uses for it. You can use it in a sump or in a filter, but I put it over my siphon to keep fish from swimming up it, so I can start the flow of water and walk away without worrying about any fish getting caught or stuck or injured. Oh, that's pretty cool. I like it. It's pretty cheap on jyaquarium.com if you're interested. So I decided to do some work on my pond. First, I decided I only want to use this tower in the summertime, just because emptying it out to scrub it in the wintertime is very difficult, because I don't like putting my arms in the cold water. I'd also like to remove all the sand from my main acrylic tank. I'm just kind of done with it. It's taking too much work. I'd rather it be a bare tank. The only reason I had sand is because I thought I would make it planted, but the temperature swings outside in the pond is just not going to work for that. That means I'll need to put something down so it's a uniform color from the bottom. I also want to put something on the back of the aquarium as a background so you can't see the cords behind it. And lastly, I'd like to remake my filter. Right now, it's a box filter kind of sort of thing with a pump in the middle. It just needs to be remade. I don't have a specific idea of what I want. I'm going to do it one way, but I will ask for suggestions, any improvements. So that's the plan. That's what the next few videos will be. So it's time to redo my pond filter. Right now I have it in this box, my pond pump with some media, some thicker sponge, and some finer fabric sponge. I'm not 100% sure how I want to redo it, but I do need to redo it. And that's because all my fabric and sponge media has gone bad. It's falling apart. Now, contrary to what a lot of companies would want you to think, you really don't want to throw away and put new filter media in until it's absolutely falling apart and must be replaced. Otherwise, you're just throwing away your good bacteria. Like I said, I don't have a great plan for how I want to redo this filter. I'm just kind of layering sponge and the old media and new media. Let me know if you have a better suggestion of how I can work this. I put a couple rocks on top just to hold some sponge down. I was just sick of that plastic box for some reason. I'd rather use this tub for now. Okay, so removing this sand was a little annoying. First I scooped it out with a dustpan and then I used my shop vac. Thankfully this main tank isn't too hard to remove from the rest of the system, just a matter of unhooking a couple things. But as you can see, this acrylic tank has this weird paper sticker residue almost on the bottom. So now that there's no sand, you can see it really well, and I don't want that. My acrylic tank is sitting on a piece of plywood and then foam, and it has this writing on it. But thankfully, I figured out it peels off, so it'll be nice and white. Next, it's a matter of getting this stuff off. But first, I used isopropyl alcohol, did some scraping, and it didn't work as well as I hoped. I also tried some soapy water, but then I figured out I could hook up my water changer and have warm water come out of it and scrape it, and that worked a lot better. I can already hear the comments, "You're scraping the tank." Look, this tank is like 30 years old, and I got it for free. I'm glad it's lasted this long, but its days are numbered, so I'm not concerned about the scratches. So I want my pond to have a white background because I'm sick of looking at all the gourds behind it. And I don't want it to be a black background, which is typical, because the bottom of the aquarium will already be white from the foam underneath the acrylic tank. And some people might not like this, but this is actually contact paper for like shelving that was dirt cheap for this big roll at Walmart. It worked amazing. It says indoor-outdoor use. It's like this plastic vinyl-y material. Now, the reason I use this is because I tried to find some actual aquarium background, but my local fish store said they didn't have any in white, so I had to improvise, and you know what? I really liked this for it. It worked very well. Now, I know some people are going to be like, oh no, algae's going to show so bad on this white background, but I don't mind. It gives me an excuse to go out there and scrub, and the fish are really going to pop with that white background. So I'm excited to see how it looks when it's all finished up. It wasn't too hard. This took me about 15 minutes. No final reveal yet, though. I still need to give it a good scrub and put it all back together. Okay, the tank's back in place with the new white background and white base. Just needs all the algae scrubbed now. My wife has these cool strawberry Crocs, but she never wears them. But they're simply too cool to not be used, so I used them while I was working outside today. I use a melamine sponge to scrub the acrylic. It really is kind of frustrating that you can't use anything too aggressive on the acrylic because it'll scratch so easy. I put back in some rocks, used acrylic cleaner on the outside, and did some siphoning. My least favorite thing about owning a pond. Now, it's probably not what you think. Most people would think, oh, you don't like scrubbing all that algae or cleaning up all the fish poop or the water changes so often. But no, to me, those are an integral part of the hobby, and so I enjoy doing those things. It's putting my hands in that cold, cold water in the wintertime. That's the hardest part. It makes all that maintenance that I enjoy really difficult. If I lived in a place with year-round warm weather, I would have no complaints owning a pond. It's just trying to do anything in the wintertime. My hands get so cold, they burn. I try to warm them back up and then go out to the pond to do some more work, and it's still so cold. So yeah, that's it for me. If you own a pond, what's your least favorite part? Also tell me your favorite part, because you gotta balance it out. Anytime I go to a bookstore, you know where I go first, the aquarium section, and I struck gold today. All of these books in my hand are on goldfish, and I'm gonna buy all of them. It could be fun for me to post a brief review of all these books, but I don't know if I'm qualified for that. Let me know in the comments if you think that's a good or bad idea. Something cool at Costco again, they have these fish bottles filled with brandy for 165 bucks. I don't enjoy alcohol, so it'd be a waste for me, but if someone buys this and drinks it, feel free to send me the empty bottle. Pond has this overflow outlet that leads to the next tank, and I'm always worried about any small fish getting stuck in it. Thankfully, I just pieced together some stuff from old sponge filters and managed to make this little piece that will let the water through, but not the fish. And I didn't even have to do anything special to it. It just fits right in there. Perfect. Time to reveal the finished product of all the changes I made to my pond. So here's the before and after. Just to recap what I did, I took all the sand out and made sure that it was white on the bottom since you'd be able to see through it now. I also put a white film on the back of the tank so you can't see the cords anymore. And I'm pretty pleased with the results. Here's a shot at night too. I'm really excited to see how the fish look when they get in the tank. It's time to put a background on another tank. This one's a blue and white pattern from JY Aquarium. Last time I posted putting on a background, somebody suggested using water, so I tried that out. But I don't know if it's user error or that technique doesn't work for me, but it went not so great this time. This is only the second time I put on a background like this, so I need to improve my skills, of course. But I had a lot of bubbles this time, and I mean a lot. I thought I got them all out, but once the tank was filled, you can see those black dots. Those were all bubbles. It doesn't look horrible or anything, but it's gonna bother me. So I guess I'll have to drain the tank and get those bubbles out. But besides that, it looks great. I mean, can't wait to get it fixed up and put some fish in there. I'm trying to go for each tank on this rack to have a different aesthetic, so this is one step closer. Today I visited a fish store I've never been to before, and man, is their aquatics section huge. I love it in here. But sadly, I came for their closing sale. Almost everything's for sale, including all the racks and tanks. It's a real bummer I'm not in a place to start my fish store yet, because if I was, I would snatch up all these racks and tanks for sure. But everything's on sale. I highly recommend anyone check it out. I'll leave the name of the store and the address at the end of this. They had some cool eels too. But most importantly for me, they had some goldfish, a bunch of arandas and black moors, but most importantly, they had a bunch of pom-pom goldfish, which I don't usually see, especially not locally. I think this is the first time I've seen them locally, so I definitely bought one. So if you're in Washington, check out this closing sale for sure.
Proof that not everything can be an album cover.
Please want to do something nice.
What's in the back room? There's nothing in the back room. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you mean that. Yeah, there is that. I've been meaning to make a new change to make the carpet algae grow more green, but it's been delayed, so that's why there hasn't been an update. But basically, brown algae doesn't grow as well if there's more water movement. I'm going to add a little underwater propeller to circulate the water better. The problem with that is, a couple of the goldfish I had in this tank before were not very strong swimmers. So if I made too much water movement, they wouldn't be healthy for them. So this took so long because I was shuffling which goldfish were in which tanks to put some better swimmers in this tank so I can up the circulation. So now that I finally did that, I'm scraping off the existing algae, putting my little propeller in place, and we're going to see what happens. Now, I'm still adding Seachem fertilizer, and I have 2 aquarium lights on this tank, 16 hours a day. So hopefully it works, but if it doesn't make green algae, I still have a few tricks up my sleeve.
Put on your coat before you get a runny nose and ruin all your long sleeves again. One good thing about the cold is finding things in your coat pockets you forgot you put there a year ago.
Hey, look, it's Mr. Fishy. That's where he was. Good luck, Fat. Guess you were right, Earl. I'm not ready for a pet.
Reviewing goldfish tanks from TV and movie part 7, Better Call Saul. Saul has a respectable tank here. Of course, it's a little too small. They think it's a 10-gallon. But look, he's only got 1 goldfish in there. He's got a filter. He's got some water agitation with a little bubbler. Because it's really a bigger goldfish, it's kind of extra points off for the tank being so small. You really want a 20-gallon minimum. Style-wise, I'm just not a fan of the blue gravel. And the decorations are a little sharp and pointy for a fancy goldfish. But besides that, this gets a solid 5 out of 10. Really not that bad, could obviously be better. Bonus review for the koi tank in the nail salon. There's mostly koi in this tank, but if you watch closely, there is 1 very large goldfish in there. Now, this isn't a good koi tank necessarily because koi get so big they really should only be in large ponds. But you know, that goldfish is probably having a pretty good life. If the koi were replaced with goldfish, this would probably be an 8 for me. But with the koi, a 7 feels fair. Rating goldfish tanks from TV and movie part 8, What About Bob? There's not a lot to say on this. It's pretty straightforward. 1 goldfish in a bowl automatically drops us down to a 2 for me. You might think that's high, but I have to leave wiggle room for worse tanks. Someone could have a fish bowl with 10 goldfish in it. But then Bob likes to take his goldfish with him in a jar and manhandle the poor thing, and all that movement and shock is not good for the goldfish. Drops down to a 1. And then when he pours it in that pitcher, that drops it down to a 0 for me. So there's not really much redeeming about this goldfish tank setup.
I don't know. I didn't count it. I am not really a math guy.
Rating goldfish tanks from TV and movie part 9. This movie's on Amazon Prime. It's called Phoenix and Griffin. This is a pretty good goldfish tank. They've got a good mix of ranchu, fantails, and orandas. If I had to guess, I'd say it's maybe a 75-gallon. Lots of aeration. Looks like there's a canister filter. There are only really 2 things that take off points for me. First, the sad little telescope floating lifelessly to the top. Now, obviously, I can't tell for sure, but a curved body like that in a goldfish usually means nitrate poisoning. Which means, even though it looks nice, they're probably not keeping up with maintenance and water changes, and so a point off for maintenance there. Second, I'm just not a fan of fake plants. Personal style choice. I understand a lot of people will only do fake plants with their goldfish because of the eating problem, but there's ways around that. This still gets a solid 8, a respectable score. Here's why I always boil wood before putting it in my aquarium. Boiling releases tannins quicker. They're not harmful, they just make the water brown, which is not the style I'm going for. It also sterilizes it, especially if it was in another tank previously. You don't know what kind of fungus, algae, parasites, or bacteria are on it, so you want a clean slate before you put it in your aquarium. Another benefit is some pieces of wood don't sink right away. Now, it doesn't work every time, but boiling the wood can help it sink. This piece was in a tropical tank before I got it, so I really wanted to boil it for a clean slate. Other ways to prep the wood, but I have pots, I have water, I'll just boil it usually. This is my shrimp and guppy tank, and it desperately needs a makeover. First things first, this piece of wood has been in there forever and still never sank, so I'm just going to throw it in the fire pit. I'm more of a soccer guy, okay? First, I need to trim and replant the taller plants in the background, And the Java moss is growing really well, but too well. It's hiding the view of the tank. So I put it off to the side so it's not in the way. I also added that big piece of wood I boiled earlier as a nice centerpiece in the tank, and I also got these nice rocks for free. So I tried to stack those in a cool way. I'm also gathering up a lot of the duckweed because it's really overgrown. The goldfish love eating duckweed, so I wanted a steady supply, but now it's growing well in all the other tanks, so I don't need as much in this one. Now look, I'm not an aquascaper, okay? It's not my specialty. I really haven't practiced or learned much about it, but for what it is, I am pleased with how this turned out. I'll have an official before and after clip later. Every single fish keeper should know what those little piles are from. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you. How to start the siphon for a water change. I'm not going to pretend like I came up with this. We all learned it from Aquarium Co-op. Step 1, have your siphon in your tank. Step 2, have the other end lower than this end, wherever your tank is. My sink is lower than where that tank is, so it drains easy. Or you can put it anywhere you want as long as it's lower. I put it out the window, put it out the sliding glass door, put it in a bucket. And when you're ready, you lower it into the water, fill it up, get all the air out, lift it, and once the water starts going, you can put it back in. Got to do it pretty quick. And that started the siphon. When you buy a fish, please don't put the water in the bag in your aquarium. After you've floated the bag for a temperature match or drip acclimated, I like to put my net over a bucket and carefully pour the fish in so that I get the fish and none of the gross water from whatever store I bought it from. Then I can safely add the fish to the tank without all that extra garbage. At the fish store today, I saw this huge white ryukin, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to buy him. I would have to rearrange some fish for quarantine and everything. But then I realized I wanted to name him Snowball, and once I named him, it was over. I had to bring him home. He was a very good deal at just $25, so I floated his bag and then put him in his new aquarium. Seems healthy enough, just some red streaks on the fins showing some stress. I'll probably quarantine him for 3 to 4 weeks, just to be sure he's doing good. You'll also notice my new Be Happy LED sign behind the tank, which I just added this week, and I think it looks really good. Let me know what you think. So I think I'm on to a little life hack with my little algae scrubber here. This little part right here is like a velvet fabric, and I think I can accomplish 2 things at once by put a little glass cleaner on that and then do my scrubbing. It seems to work pretty well, like Windexing my glass while I scrub the algae on the inside.